Добрий день всім.
Good afternoon, everyone who joined us today. Olga Tamanova is with you. I greet you at Media Center Ukraine at Ukrinform. 98th day of war for our freedom and independence. Today is the International Day of Defending Children. So our first briefing was devoted to this topic of defending children in war conditions. We'll talk about changes in the procedure of adoption at martial law. And we'll talk about the advanced technologies that defend children that lost their parents. And I would like to introduce you our speakers. Our speakers today will be Daria Gerasymchuk, advisor and Commissioner President of Ukraine on children's rights and child rehabilitation. Mr. Koshelenko, Deputy on digital transformation, digital development, and digitalization, and Ivanov, head of the expert group of implementation and assessment of quality of electronic services of Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Ms. Daria, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. Today we're talking about defending children, 1st of June. And first of all, I want to start with the statistics that I think is interesting for all. At 8 o'clock in the morning today, I can identify about 243 children killed in this war and 446 children that were wounded. They're not exact because we don't know for sure what happens on the temporarily occupied territories. And we understand that when we recover the territories, we'll discover that those figures are more. And it's not just figures, it's not just statistics, because behind every figure, because that changes every day, is a broken life, interrupted life of a child and their family. Today, on the 1st of June, I would like to say, with the voice of all Ukrainian children, 243 children that I was speaking about, and 240 children that were killed since the start of the war, since 2014, will never be able to speak, regretfully. This year, the Children's Day in Ukraine is celebrated not in children's realia, because children are forced to find shelter from bombardments of occupants. They're forced to hide in subway. They're forced to abandon their homes, move and look for safe shelters in Ukraine or abroad. And this list of non-childish realia will be continued for a long time. When I'm asked what amount of children suffered due to military aggression, I can for sure say that every child that lives in Ukraine, that's over 7.5 million children, that's almost 6% of the population of Ukraine, suffered from the war. I'm not only talking about physical wounds. It's naturally damaged, psychological damage and psychological emotional damage in children, and full absolute violation of all rights of children. Currently, in a day of defending children, we're saying that the war strips children of all their rights. The aggressor state, Russian Federation, let's speak it up front, and let's remember who is the aggressor. They violate all the rights of children, of Ukrainian children, provided by the Convention of the UN of Children's Rights and other international and national legislation. It's the right for personal life and defense from infringement, protection from all form of physical and psychological violence, the right for leisure and rest and education and family, rights for defense on all ways of sexual exploitation and sexual seduction. And this is not a full list. We cannot be happy saying that children have the rights for this, because in Ukraine, currently, during the war, the aggressor strips them of these rights. And we can say that the actions of Russian Federation on Ukrainian children has all the signs of genocide on Ukrainian people. Why? Because I'm saying about forced movement and deportation. I'm speaking about the order of the Russian president that was signed just yesterday, about the facts and messages that are communicated by Russian Federation about adoption of Ukrainian children. Currently, we can say that from open source data, the border of Ukraine from Russian between Russia and occupied territories are low. It's more than 2,000 children were forcibly moved either to occupied territories or to the territory of Russian Federation or to Belarus. I can indubitably say that all those actions of the aggressor are absolutely illegal. They're banned by the Geneva Convention and international law, and we will fight for each Ukrainian child. Today, we can also say that the world of adults has failed the day of defending children in Ukraine. That's for sure. Ukraine does everything possible to ensure welfare of every child, because every Ukrainian understands that children are our future, and we have no future without children. The system of defending children's rights in Ukraine is very imperfect, and children are still very often they grow in the institutional facilities, not in the families. System of social services for children is just starting making the first steps and starting evolving. And there are many problems, of course. I'm just saying that we have problems. We're making the first step to solve them and develop new system of defending children's rights. Right now we have great chances for that. The decision of 17th of March, we created coordination headquarters of defending children's rights during the war. Right now we coordinate the operations of that headquarters on children's issues with the Minister of Social Policy, Ms. Maryna Lazebna, who regretfully could not join our press conference today. And to this coordination headquarters, it unites all the agencies and ministries that are adjacent to children's rights, and also MPs, international experts, international organizations, representatives of civil society. And what is considered by this headquarters? There are evacuation issues, provision of timely financial payments, and detection of needs of children that were evacuated to the safe zones of Ukraine, those who crossed the border of Ukraine and found shelter abroad, found temporary shelter abroad. Monitoring of needs and providing for those needs, transportation, access to education, and many other issues. And most important is we're preparing the changes that has to happen after the war, because right now we're all those problems became even more bare, and we can see what needs to be changes to change the system of defending children's rights after the war. If you're interested in figures and data, please visit my official Facebook page, where there is a detailed report of coordination headquarters activity for each month. In a few days, you'll see the last reports about 100 days of this coordination headquarters during the war. Also, I want to say that it's not only the coordination headquarters of children's rights. It's not the only institution that defends children's rights. In all the branches of power, from national to local level, they either created or are creating working groups and headquarters that elaborate routes and changes that need to be needed to build new system of defending children's rights. Today on this press conference, we gathered to talk about children's rights and right of every child to have a family in any country during the war, not only in Ukraine. The procedure of adoption becomes slower or becomes even impossible as it happened in Ukraine. It's clear from objective measures because it's impossible to implement it. We simplified the guardianship process for relatives, and also there was a temporary guardianship for children. It's just something that adults could help children. We made a chatbot in Telegram, Child is Not Alone, that we created in the first week of war. And for today, we had about 20,000 of applications from Ukrainian families regarding temporary guardianship for children. And more applications, more developed applications, detailed application we have for 5,000. And the starting webinar has passed over 3,000 people. It says that Ukrainians, as a nation, we're happy to share our family warmth with children that need it. And we just need to be assisted on this, to do this the right way. Considering not the desires of adults, but on the children's interests as the priority. The Ukrainian community during the war, today is the Day of Defense of Children. It's not, and we're not opening new schools and new kindergartens. It will happen, and we'll rebuild all that was ruined and damaged. But today, we mark the presentation of means that are aimed at improving the services and digitalization. I will not stop in detail about the procedure that we were involved with for many months. My colleagues will add to my speech and will answer your questions. But why this was done, the main idea, main concept that each child in Ukraine had a family. Naturally, we understand that digitalization of any procedure will not solve the problem per se, but will improve the procedure for orphans, make it easier and more accessible for children, for people, more accessible for people. And I wrap up my speech now, and I give the floor to my colleagues. Thank you, Daria. I think we'll ask questions after the speeches. Mr. Koshelenko, please, Ministry of Social Policy of Ukraine. Thank you to the organizers and participants for this very important topic, especially during the war. I want to say that we, in our ministry, each day we work on this topic in different directions, in different regions. Due to the military aggression of Russia and Ukraine, many Ukrainians faced the conditions when they had to evacuate or had to stay in the places that are or were under attack. Out of 706 institutions, 82 institutions were evacuated all or part of the children within Ukraine or abroad. Over 5,000 children were evacuated. In Ukraine, 2,078, and abroad for over 4,000 children from 92 institutions. Speaking of IDP families, 572 families overall, and many children stayed on the territories that are under threat. The enemy hits with cruise missiles on schools and infrastructure, and this all has impact on just increases the amount of children that has no parental guardianship. To protect children and to protect orphans that have no guardians, we made series of actions that I will tell you. First, we improved the right of crossing the state border in simplifying the crossing the border for those who have children and for orphanages and for guardians of children with children. There were algorithms for children that live in different institutions. We improved the mechanism and widened the form of temporary placement of children during the martial law, and made a list of conditions for children that are placed in the territories of Ukraine where there is no active military actions. I made agreement with UNICEF and Lithuania Republic that support us and support Ukrainian children. I would also like to say about digitalization, because actually to protecting the children, all the ministry team is involved with that, and we work on elaborating the mechanism of safe return of children. Speaking of digitalization that I'm responsible for, starting from today, the Ministry of Digitization with the Commissioner of President of on Children's Rights, we implemented this complex project of simplifying the process of applying of citizens that want to become guardian of children via Dia portal. So to apply for initial consultancy for adoption is possible during a personal visit and also via Dia digitally. Today, the amount of children that could be adopted exceeds 17,000, and the candidates have less candidates by times. And why we have less candidates? Because the procedure is quite complex. It's long term of gathering all the documents necessary for a person to enter the list of possible guardians for adoption, and it's a difficult paper form, and all the processes are difficult and are hindrances. We change that and implement fast and simple digital process to popularize the family forms of raising children and assist implementation of children's rights overall. Now, in 5 minutes, everyone could be able to apply to get consultancies on procedure of adopting. They just need to authorize on Dia.gov.ua portal, fill out the form, and sign it with a personal electronic signature. Also, we continue to move forward, and closely we plan to digitalize, make a register of candidates that want to adopt children, and make a register of potential adopting families that would raise children, and trying to simplify procedures with decreasing the hindrances for citizens in this process that want to adopt children. Also, we provide more and more transparency for all to be clear how to advance if the decision is passed. It's important to mention that the service on children that continue working with people personally. Digital is a fast opportunity, but ability to speak personally, to discuss the procedure of adoption, this all exists. And I want to say more that adoption procedure, it operates in some regions. Of course, it has to be relaunched and this digital component, because not all the regions have the services on children's rights. But in regions where courts are working, where services on children's rights are working, for us, it's important to just increase the scale and transparency of this process, and that's where we're moving to. We believe that we will win. We believe that children will come back to Ukraine to rebuild it, and those children that lost their parents will find the gardens, will find the families who will build great future of Ukraine together with all of us. Thank you. This is Ivanov, Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Good morning. Yes, naturally, if you follow the news of digitalization since 1st of September last year, Ukraine started moving to the regime of paperless. Ministry of Digitalization is working on it. We launched many digital services that improve reception of social services and other categories of services, including successful services like e-support for payments for citizens, also programs like support for NPEs for, that suffered from COVID restrictions, payment of 8,000 to them. Speaking about services that have reached finally the category of like family services, those that are related to adoption, and it's symbolic that International Day of Protecting Children were launched the first stage of this service, because the service of adopting is very difficult, complex, and has a lot of bureaucracy to it. And we finally reached to it to simplify it and make it accessible for all that wish to adopt children. And we launched the opportunity online to sign for the first consultancy on adoption. This service will be available during today, and it will take you just 3-5 minutes just to sign for it, for the consultancy. You just have to pass 3-4 key steps, answer the questions, and all the rest of data will be added automatically during authorization on Dia. The service is available in Dia and family segment. Authorization is done via use of qualified electronic signature, and this application will be forwarded to the service. Within 15 days or earlier, the service will contact the applicant and will invite for consultancies. And the consultancies will also be able offline or online. You won't have to go anywhere actually physically. You could do that from a convenient place. But it's not all. The work on the next steps of this project is going on. And I think until the end of August, it will be possible to submit the application itself for adopt children. Not only for adoption, but for a candidate of garden or making orphanage on a family basis, or a garden. So we don't stop. We keep working, and maybe it's even before August it will be available. Maybe even next month we'll see some movements to simplify this service and to increase the amount of those who adopt families that adopt children, and to decrease the amount of orphans that increases during the wartime, regretfully. Therefore, I thank you to our colleagues and partners that were involved with this project, as with consultancies and also with technical aid. And also, I think that pretty soon we will come up to you with the good news on these services, and with opportunities to apply online to get a status of candidate for adopting children. Thank you to your colleagues. You can ask questions now. Thank you. Good morning, Daria Express channel. Today we're talking about, as Daria was saying, that orphanage, we have a lot of orphans. I'm an orphan. I had no parental care. Does Ukraine right now consider adoption of children by one person, or by a person that is in a partnership of the same gender? I mean LGBT community. And Ministry of Social Policy. What happened to the orphanages of family type that are on the territories that are occupied now? Did we manage to evacuate the gardens? Did we manage to evacuate the documents and the children? Maybe it's my question, because I'm head of the coordination headquarters on protecting children's rights, and the evacuation questions are come there. What I can say for sure, that 272 institutions where children were present 24/7, with as orphans or those who have no parental guardianship, they were evacuated to the safe zones, either in Ukraine or abroad. Regarding the amount of orphanages of family type and guardians, you understand that it's a huge amount. Statistics exists. I cannot tell it just from the top of my head. It exists in the report on the coordination center report, but I will want to partially answer a question in the part of families that stay on the occupied territories. It so happened, yes, that in certain conditions, the authorities did not have time to push this, or somewhere it was too unexpected and too fast and we didn't have just time to pull them out. And in some cases, directors or parents were not prepared to evacuate and to accompany children. There were different objective circumstances. Those that stay in the occupied territories, I don't want to name the institutions, and I ask you not to, because this really impact on the safety of children that are there. We are in constant touch with them. We're in contact. We try to fulfill their humanitarian needs and medical needs, because sometimes they exist. We support them materially with the families, the parental orphanages, for them to be able to feed the children. And naturally, they all are in the lists regarding humanitarian. There are agreements on the humanitarian corridors, and a big team is working on this. And I'm not authorized to speak on their behalf about humanitarian corridors, because there is a task just to gather and process and convey the information to the bodies that are caring about this. But I would like to ask you, please clearly filter what we bring to Ether, and not to even to speak about variants, about returning the children, humanitarian corridors, how it could be done, because this is dangerous. It could damage, deteriorate the process. Regarding the first LGBT community, right now I cannot say that we make any changes to legislation that regulate the adoption, except for the changes that were made for digitalization of procedure. But all that was before, it stays as is, according to the law of Ukraine. Who can, who cannot adopt. It's available on the Ministry of Social Policy site, and all willing can see it. Konform, which I would call it. Question to Daria Gerasymchuk. The law of adoption of Ukraine, of small Ukraine in Russia. What does it mean? What strategy of Russia do you see there? Very simple, very simple. Sorry. They're very subsequent in this. They were preparing for it. And how they communicate, it's a part of a program of so-called denazification of Ukraine, denationalization of small Ukrainian, when they move them, when they kidnap them and change their citizenship. Is it legal? No. It is prohibited by Geneva Convention. The occupant has to ensure that there are no changes of civilian status of children, and they intend to change it, and they have to be responsible according to the international law. The occupants have to be responsible. Number 1+1. I just wanted to ask you 3 questions. Many to Daria. I'm curious, do you have any figures how many children, the orphans, or that had no guardianship of parents, they return? How many of them return, and when they will be able to return? Families that have many children, over 3 children, a lot of them left. How many of them stayed? How they survive in the conditions of war? Because I know many of them stayed. And thirdly, you said that 20,000 application about partial temporary guardianship, and how were but how many of them are successful? I will be brief because we have 2 minutes. First part regarding the amount of children that returned and when they'll be able to return. I mentioned that on the Coordination headquarters, we're making the basis, the grounds, what will be after the war. However, the first step was the question regarding what has to be the military civil administration, Ministry of Civil Administration made the decision regarding the evacuation of children. Also, they make a decision regarding the return of children. They have to have certain checklists, or have to check, is it safe? The institution is there? Does it exist even now? Does this family have a home to return to? Do they have to be moved to other territory of Ukraine? What has to be there for them to return? Currently, we have a task Ministry of Healthcare, a Ministry of Social Policy, a Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine, that during 2 weeks to provide elaborated checklists that we, for our national headquarters, will propose for use for those decisions. Right now, we're not speaking about return of children, speaking of children that were evacuated. because to impact the return of families, we cannot. If a family makes a decision to return, they return. If we're speaking about evacuated institutions, we do it case by case basis. The movement we tackle it, or we don't even speak about return to Ukraine yet. Regarding the second question about families that have over three more children, we can say that there are many NGOs and international partners that have projects on monitoring status of orphanages of family type and gardens and garden families and families where children returned from the institutional facilities. We have experience of COVID pandemic. We have thought over it. I would like to speak from Tribune that if there are international organizations or NGOs in Ukraine that are willing to aim their activity and supporting families with many children, please do that, because from my analysis of projects that exist, families with many children, they fall out of projects. Therefore, I spoke with many partners regarding the families with support of children with many families that will be included. So we try to control that to the max. And third question, temporary gardens. During the war, we've found about 1,500 children that required temporary guardianship, and that happened. Half of them was under temporary guardianship of relatives, and part of them to the family orphanages, and the smallest part was in the institutional care. So most of them got families. Thank you for finding times and to join us, and thank you for your very important task. Dear friends, at 2 o'clock we continue talking about protecting children. Deputy Minister of Interior